let's pause that. Okay. Oh yeah, and just noticed the alert. Thank you for the follow, Haas 00312. Thank you much. Tis appreciated. Alright. So, here we go. I am going to be switching between like the mic and the headphones in a bit because there are some like YouTube video components for this, and I can't hear it if it's on the mic. So if the audio quality changes a bit periodically, that would be why. But yeah, so anyway. Greetings, guys, gals, and non-binary pals, and welcome to this week's installment of Botany Book Club. Whether you're watching this on Twitch, as a VOD on Twitch, or if I've managed to actually edit it down a little bit and upload it to YouTube as a video, whatever format, thank you for stopping by. As you can see from yonder photo over here, we're doing In Defense of Plants at the moment. So, I still really like this cover, honestly. It's just a very cool cover. Alright. So, also by, this point in the book, we're like halfway through, have further figured out why it's an orchid as the cover and the main chapter breaks, because the author is really into orchids, which is cool. Not exactly my preferred plant genre, but orchids are very cool, and learning about them is fabulous. So, there's those times that you're mid-sentence and read something and it's just like, oh, forgot about that. I don't remember what I was gonna say exactly, but I looked at the back cover and it's just humorous things about plants and their ruthless, horny, or simply cunning behavior. Yeah, that's basically what this is. So today we're talking about chapters 3 and 4. So 3 is The Wild World of Plant Sex, and 4 is, where is it? Plants on the Move. So we've got pollination and various, pollination methods and things connected to that. And seed dispersal, and sometimes plant movement itself for today. So, I don't think I have it keyed up. 1 second. Come on. Come on. Where are you? Okay. There we go. We'll get to that in a sec, but wanted to make sure that it was actually up and viable. So, first off, he starts off chapter 3 with a kind of a description of reproduction that would be a bit odd, to say the least, if it was people. Where, what was it? Where in order to reproduce, you have odd bundles of cells under your arms, and then they, what was it? And they have like half of your genetic material, and then you catapult them away somewhere and hope that something comes with them. And then other genetic material hopefully lands on the same spot, and it kind of forms a mass, and when water is introduced to the mix, then there might be some kind of actual fertilization happening, and then, oh look, there's a new being. And that's basically the process for certain ferns. So yeah, that's cool. It's one of those times, right, that like as an avid consumer of sci-fi and fantasy stories and things, right? I'm really interested in how authors come up with certain plot lines and like species backstories and things. And we've got stuff like that doesn't seem out of the realm of possibility for certain elements of like different alien species that that Starfleet would meet on an expedition out into space or something of that nature. And okay, one sec. I was trying to ignore it and I can't. There's a random spot on my glasses. Ugh. Okay. 1 second. Okay. Now I can see. Alright. Oh, God. In this particular situation, it's describing one half of the fern life cycle. Because the ferns, as we tend to acknowledge them, as we tend to like know them, are like invisible and feathery and have frond type appendages, or if you're looking at immature leaves, it's the fiddleheads a lot of times that you see, which apparently you can eat. I have not tried that, but apparently that's a thing that you can do. That said, I don't know if that extends to all varieties of ferns. It probably doesn't. So yeah, just approach with caution if you want to do that. Make sure that the plant is what you think it is before you eat it. Just as a general, regardless of what it is. Even if it's a tomato, just like verify that it's what you think it is. But that, with the fronds and the feathery bits and everything, is the sporophyte generation of the fern, because it's producing spores, which, you know, the bits on the undersides of the leaves that are flung out into the ether to create new plants. As opposed to the gametophyte generation, which is when the spores come together and water is added and things, you know, from that. But yeah, there's interestingly a lot of plants still that rely on water as a fertilization mode, because there's like active sperm that need to like swim to the egg, wherever that happens to be on the plant, or in the case of spores, somewhere that has been distributed away from the plant. Now, okay, so mosses are pretty cool. Like ferns and various other plants, they tend to, well, they do rely on water for fertilization and creation of new colonies and things. And some mosses are pretty fragile. It depends on the environmental conditions as to whether or not they can generally survive. But then we've got things like fire moss, right? Which, let me get back to this guy. Okay, So, Keratodon purpureus, goes from a yellow-green to red. Found throughout the world. But it's one of those that can not only survive, but it kind of thrives under environmental stress. And how was it? So, yeah. This guy. So, not only is it able to survive under relatively hostile conditions, including if the soil has been contaminated with heavy metals or there's been a lot of disturbance in the environment. But whereas most mosses need water for the gametes to flow freely and whatnot, these guys have evolved a kind of symbiotic relationship with springtails, which are really tiny arthropods. And there's the male and female stalks have different scents, different scent intensities. So they go to the male one and crawl around on that, picking up the sperm that is on the male features. And when they get bored of hanging out over there, they crawl over to the female components and crawl around over there. And it's a stronger scent, so they spend more time over there, thus fertilizing the plant. Which is cool. And yeah, so it's unlikely that that's kind of a unique situation as far as evolution is concerned. But yeah. Okay. Now, with the let's switch back. Okay. Now, with pollination and all of that, the big it's probably the big two at this point that people tend to, be aware of as far as pollinators are bees and butterflies. unless it's a very particular plant, like, what was it? The jewel orchid from chapter 3? 2. We're on 3. Wait. Was it 2? Yeah. So, in certain cases, like with the jewel orchid, butterflies are the pollinator. That it's evolved to be pollinated by one specific type, one specific species, really, of butterfly. And that's the case in some situations. There's certain lilies that are best pollinated or only pollinated by butterflies. As far as flying insects, bees are pretty important, but moths make up the majority. But past that, we've got birds of many species, and beetles, lizards, small mammals sometimes, depending on what the particular morphology of that plant happens to be. Sometimes it's flies, sometimes it's ants. If it's well, not usually ants, but sometimes. Just because the ants have the antimicrobial coating that they put on themselves so that they don't get attacked by fungus, which is a very real problem for ants, especially when they're, in the ant hills where there's, limited ventilation unless they've put ventilation structures in there themselves. So, with beetles, shall we say, we've got, what was it? Yeah. So like, I don't know if you've seen a cycad in person, but they have a very, and also it depends on the species, admittedly, but they have a very interesting sort of flower setup. And it's fascinating structures in there, honestly. But a lot of cycads are pollinated by beetles. It tends to be a relatively secure environment. Beetles tend to kind of want a secure, sort of dry environment. that's not too hot, not too cold, just, a nice medium temperature to lay their eggs and whatnot. And that tends to fit pretty well in there. Also, sometimes lizards, which I don't know that they're pollinating the cycad, but I know there's a lot. Maybe not a lot, but I've seen lizards scurrying around the flowers on our cycad, so there's at least a few that live in there, or have lived in there, rather. Yeah. Well, I'm thinking about it. We've got... So just as an example, this would be an example of one of the springtails that would potentially be helping to fertilize mosses, or the fire moss in particular. Okay. There we go. Okay. Okay. So. There's lines that you read, right? It's like, it's accurate. It paints an interesting mental picture, but it is accurate, right? This is no different. What was it? Page 82 of chapter 3. As we have already learned, at least one species of jewel orchid absolutely... Okay, yeah, let's try that again. One sec. As we have already learned, at least one species of jewel orchid absolutely requires butterflies to successfully reproduce. The jewel orchid isn't alone either. Many of the larger flowered lilies have also co-opted butterflies for sex. No commentary, it's just, okay. The phrasing. It fits, but, okay. Oh, yeah. In the realm of, like, weird... Uh, oh yeah, just as a thing, right? I was going through, and the sago palm was mentioned as um, a plant that also depends on, like, what was it? Where was it? Don't know what the mention was. Just that I looked it up. Um, it was there, and now it's not. No. Okay. Well, basically, I looked up the sago palm because it was mentioned in conjunction with cycads and their interesting reproductive strategies. And I happened to click on sago palm flower, and this thing came up, right? I know I've addressed it already in a video that I did that in the YouTube version of this I will have linked somewhere around the screen, right? In the corner over there probably. But just like going through Wish and seeing the strawberry kiwi plant and pink tomatoes and whatever else was in there, it was a lot. um this this is not a thing, you know. A mini sago is just a young plant. And B, they're not blue. They have chlorophyll. Just like, regardless of how photoshopped it looks, because, you know, it's very obvious that they masked out the leaves and changed the color density and stuff. Phrasing is wrong on that one. But, like, not color density. Color. Yeah, we'll just go with that. But, like, that, no, that's not a thing. Like, even the background grass is, like, blue now. No. It looks like an art project. No. So, like, if you're you're looking at seeds or plants or whatnot, and you see something that's like this sort of looking thing, or those eye-catching succulents at Home Depot or similar establishments where they're like neon pink or something, and it's marketed as, I don't know, fairy plants or psychedelic whatever or something like that. The ones at Home Depot were spray painted. And these over here is Photoshop. Basically, if it looks a bit sus, probably is. Moving on. Now that we've gotten that PSA out of the way, there we go. So, carrying on with discussions of interesting pollination strategies and things. We've got the Glaucidian genus here. Specifically, Glaucidian Lancellarium. So, these are specifically pollinated by moths. And in order to ensure that the moth is there when the plant is flowering, so that it can be pollinated, there's no immediate food reward for the moths, but there's male and female flowers, and the moth goes to the male flowers and then goes to the female flowers, picking up the pollen and then depositing it, and then lays their eggs in a particular section of the flower so that when the fruit is developing, there's a food source for the moth larvae. Now, ordinarily, right, you would expect that as the larvae mature, they eat the fruit from the inside and then, like, nibble their way out and go exploring the rest of whatever. Hey, honeycomb. Welcome. They eat their way out and go exploring, but in this case, if they do that, then the fruit falls off the tree and they die. So instead, they're held captive inside the fruit, attached to the tree until the fruit fully ripens and explodes a year later. Because a year later, after all of the fruits have fallen off the tree, is when the tree flowers again. So it's forcing the moths to stay in place so that they're there when it flowers again. Which works as an evolutionary strategy, but it's like I see what you're doing, but also burning 5G while we wait on groceries. Aw. Your presence is appreciated, friends. It really is. It really, really is. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, the end sentence right here, right? By holding the moths captive, the tree is literally controlling when its one and only pollinator is available to do its reproductive bidding. Yes. Accurate. Oh, God. Alright. So, the next one in the lineup here, and is that the first one? Yeah. I forgot about that. So the first image for chapter 3, right, is the lily that's being pollinated by the pipevine swallowtail. So that I should probably just switch back to the screen. Yes, there we go. That works. Yes. So we've got lily and where is it? And the swallowtail. So swallowtail, lily. Yes. There we go. Those plants really give zero fucks. Gangster AF. Exactly. It's like, what? What do you mean you want to fly around? Honestly. Okay. So the next one in the lineup is the Darwin slipper. Where is it? Come on. Focus, dang it. There we go. The lily kind of looks like an angry squid. I mean, you're not wrong. Squid do be kind of angry. A little bit. So we've got that. And if this ever decides it wants to load, we've got, there we go. Excuse you, what are you doing? Websites, what are you doing? Okay, so Calceolaria, Uniflora, or Darwin slipper. So it's a kind of quirky looking little plant. Nope. Come on. Darwin had interesting taste in footwear. Yes. Yes, indeed. So, we've got the Darwin slipper there. Now, these little guys are found in the more or less inhospitable upper craggy peaks of the Andes, where insects aren't really a prevalent thing. So, how do they go about getting pollinated? Well, if you'll observe the flowers, they all have this like white something in the middle there. And what was it? Where is? Okay. And apparently, it's really high in sugars and nutrients and energy and stuff. So the uh, there we go. Seed snipe here is very interested in the flowers because it wants to eat the white appendage that the flowers have. Again, if it ever decides it actually wants to load. There we go. Okay. Bird. And in the process of, numbing the white bit, bird ends up with pollen stuck to their head. And as they're going around the patch, eating a bunch of the white parts of the flower, they're spreading the pollen to different plants, thus pollinating things. Seems to work. So, seed snipe, any relation to gutter snipe? Alright. One moment, please. Okay. Alright. Fascinating feather acquired instead of groceries off home. Okay. I mean, that works. Alright. So, we've got. Unfurl yourselves under my banner, noble savages, illustrious guttersnipes, wrote Mark Twain sometime around 1869. Twain was among the first writers to use guttersnipe for a young hoodlum or street urchin. In doing so, he was following a trend among writers of the time to associate gutter, a low area on the side of the road, with a low station in life. Other writers in the late 19th century used guttersnipe more literally as a name for certain kinds of snipes or birds with long, thin beaks that live in wet areas. Gutterbird was another term that was used at the time for birds and disreputable persons, and even snipe itself has a history as a term of opprobrium. It was used as such during Shakespeare's day. Just the disapproving look on that cat is a lot. Okay, come on. Come on, dictionary, let me. There we go. Yeah. So. Okay, there we go. Just decided to switch screens for a second there. Which, not cool, computer. Not cool. Yeah. All kinds of education happening up in here. Alright. So, on top of the birds and butterflies and bees and moths. Wow, okay. We've also got bats that are rather extensive pollinators. Now, it depends on the area, but most night blooming plants you'll find either being pollinated by bats, moths, or sometimes beetles, depending on what it is. And is it here or is it later in the chapter? Yeah, it's here. I just closed the book and didn't mean to. There we go. Yeah. So, we've got things like the sago. No, the sago was before. The saguaro, which, I mean, it takes like 30 years for a saguaro to mature enough to even have flowers. But once it reaches flowering age, there are other visitors to the flowers, but the main pollinator happens to be the long-nosed bat, who is or the lesser long-nosed bat, who is this little guy over here. Come on. There we go. And we'll get to it in a little bit, but we've got pollination and we've got seed dispersal in this section. So in a lot of the instances where bats are involved, what's happening? Bats are both the main pollinator, but also the main disperser of seeds too, because they go to the plant for nectar and pollinate it, but then they also eat the fruits, and then kind of carpet the surrounding terrain, if you will, with the seeds as they're flying, because bats tend to poop in flight, which makes sense. Birds do that too, but I wasn't aware that that was a bat thing as well. Yeah. Also, fun fact, apparently, saguaro flowers produce amino acids that help female bats maintain lactation while raising their young, which, is important if they want the little baby bats to be alright. But yeah, that's very cool. I was not aware of that. Alright. Okay. And oh, yeah. Now, I didn't pull it up in the computer, but we've got an example of sea beans, or sea beans? Sea bean. Yeah, it's a sea bean. And there's it's got the key sort of P features, like the sort of wing-shaped petals and everything. And there's a main, like, what do they call it? A banner. Yeah. a big banner sort of pedal that acts as not a beacon per se, but like a homing dish kind of a thing. Because bats use echolocation to find food. And for a long time, science was thinking that, scientists thought that bats used like visual cues to find flowers, which, I mean, they do, but I mean, bats are most active at night, so visual cues in the darker parts of a heavily forested atmosphere, which tends to be where they aren't that reliable most of the time. But it was known that bats that fed on insects used echolocation. And it was assumed that bats that fed on plant material didn't as much, because the echo would need to be more specialized, because the plants aren't moving and there's no until better sound dishes were developed, there wasn't any sound per se to register. There is, but you just have to be able to pick it up. And they found that bats do use echolocation, but it's just on a very particular frequency. And in the case of sea beans, once the bat has fed from a particular flower, or in the process of feeding from a particular flower, the main banner petal ends up distorted so that it doesn't look like a viable food source anymore, so that the bats aren't going to be going to that flower again, because there's a very limited amount of nectar in each flower, and once that nectar has been eaten, it's an indicator that the pollen from that flower has been transferred to whoever took the nectar. So therefore, there's no need for it to be revisited, because if someone goes back to that flower, they're just going to be depositing the pollen back into the same flower, and that's pointless. So, nature is very cool. And also bats. Bats are awesome. Seriously. Bats are adorable. They just are. Oh yeah. And there's a note that lizards haven't been respected as pollinators or haven't been acknowledged as pollinators too much, which is true. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So I'm gonna switch back to this. Okay. Alright, so moving on with the lizard pollination thing. We've got the Nescagon Nescagon mauritianus. From Mauritius. And as you can see in here, we've got a lavender flower with bright red nectar. And scientists were trying to figure out why it was bright red. What is happening with that? And it was discovered that well, it's thought at least that it's because geckos rely on brightly colored markings when interacting with each other. So it's replicating the draw for geckos because it's a gecko pollinated plant. Yeah. Okay. That's the wrong screen. There we go. And we're back. Okay. Okay, and then we've got the grass pink orchid or Calopogon tuberosus. That's the next. Come on. The next image in here. Oh yeah. So there's a lot of different pollination modes and mechanisms and whatever in here, and just in general for plants. But some of them don't actually provide a food source or other incentive to the plant, to the pollinator. And we've got one that's the elder-flowered orchid that some plants have purple flowers and some plants have yellow flowers. And it alternates between purple and yellow as to which ones have the higher population in a particular area. Because these go to the more prevalent one and spread the pollen around, and then realize that there's no food or anything, so go to the less prevalent one and spread the pollen around. And after a while realize that, let's say purple is the more abundant, so they realize that the purple doesn't do anything, so they go to the yellow one and ignore the purple ones. So purple becomes less prevalent because the purple genetics aren't being spread around, and then it repeats the cycle because yellow is the more prevalent then, and then they realize that yellow doesn't have anything, so they go back to purple. So it's just like it switches between the two all the time, which is an interesting strategy, I'll say that much. And then we've got a plant that mimics the scent of dying bees to get kleptoparasitic flies to pollinate it. And and there's certain plants, right? Like, the bee orchid that are pretty cool. They look kind of cool. That falls into the realm of like plants that don't provide a food source, but what was it? But involve sexual deception. Now, or what was it? Or yeah. There are plants out there that tap into an urge even more primal than the need to eat. Such plants utilize the promise of sex to lure in pollinators. I'm not talking about offering pollinators a place to mate or lay eggs. When I say sexual deception, I mean tricking a pollinator into thinking it's having sex with a female when it's actually a flower. Because that kind of looks a lot like a bee. A little bit, right there. Complete with, the fuzzy bits and stuff. There. But yeah, that's how the bee orchid gets pollinated. Doesn't do anything for the bees, but like the plant gets fertilized. And then the last one for chapter 3 is the large tongue orchid, or Cryptostellis erecta. This guy. that apparently smells like a female wasp, and incentivizes male wasps to try and mate with the plant. And apparently, in the particular species of wasp involved here, queen wasps and bees are genetically haplodiploid. Basically, it means that for Hymenoptera, females are produced when sperm fertilizes an egg, while males are produced via unfertilized eggs. Any queen whose eggs go unfertilized in the particular year involved will produce the next crop of males, while the rest of the fertilized queens produce the next crop of females. And in that way, they regulate the population of the wasps in the area. Which that was that Australia? Yeah, Australia. Can't say I'm surprised with Australia. Anyway, okay, so now we're on chapter 4. Plants on the move. Okay. Okay. So now we're in the section that's talking about seed dispersal and potential plant modality and things of that nature. So, the first one we've got is the Javan cucumber, that as the not seed pod, but as the structure dries, okay, here we go. It produces a gourd or melon-like fruit the size of a football called a pepo. Upon ripening, a hole opens in the bottom of the pepo, and seeds gradually fall out. So each of the seeds is positioned in the center of a large wing-like structure that's 5 inches or 13 centimeters across. So there we go. Kinda reminds me of a shark egg, not gonna lie. But we've got, where's it? We've got the seed and then the wing structure that carries it on the wind. And for this particular one, it's adapted enough that if it's going up, then what was it? Yeah. if it's dipping down, then the wings catch an updraft and it pops up again, and then it just keeps, doing that until it lands somewhere. Welcome back, friends. So it's just dipping up and down until it lands somewhere. And apparently they've been found pretty far out to sea on ships, just like coming in on the wind on deck. Yeah. They are also now very blessed, feeling owners of a Merlin wing feather. Ooh, nice. Very nice. Now, on the topic of seed dispersal, we've got the quintessential American Western scene change plant, for lack of better phrasing. It was on the... Really? I was on the dang screen. Come on. The tumbleweed. Now, apparently, the tumbleweed over here comes from Russia and is an amaranth, which I wasn't aware of. But what's the description here? When the seeds mature, the plant dries up. As water leaves its tissues, the branches curl inward, forming the whole plant into a ball. Eventually, a weak point at the base of the stem breaks, freeing the plant from its anchor. All dried and crispy, the lightweight husk of the plant is free to blow around the landscape. As it tumbles, the seeds are scattered in every direction. The fact that this invader can be found all over North America is testament to how effective the tumbleweed strategy can be. Because it just keeps rolling. But yeah, seriously, like... I realize at this point that there's a lot of plants that aren't native to where they've become iconically associated with, Some of them are invasive, some of them aren't, but have caused issues for one reason or another. Did not expect this one. But it's fascinating. So, yeah. Also, it keeps being referred to as a thistle. It was thought to be a thistle. It's not. It's an amaranth. Just how tumbleweed or Russian thistle managed to reach the U.S. remains something of a mystery. One theory suggests that the plant had been introduced by malevolent Mennonites. Another theory suggests that the weed was accidentally introduced by Russian immigrants through contaminated flaxseed in the 1870s. Whatever the case, the Russian thistle proved extremely adaptable and more than a little bothersome. The outbreak began in South Dakota, receiving government attention by 1880. The infestations were menacing. Some farmers were reportedly forced to abandon their homes. It wasn't long before the weed spread to Canada and other states. By 1885, it had even reached California. Today, the plant is found to some degree in every state save Florida and Alaska, which, just as a thing, right? If it forced people to abandon their homes, and it's become synonymous with the Old West and Westerns and whatnot, as a symbol of, like, there was no one there and a tumbleweed rolled by. Like, which one came first? I don't know. Because, like, interesting. Interesting indeed. Alright, so now we're on to the ballistic dispersal part of the discussion. Which cowboys forcing Indians out, symbolism is major. Yeah. Actually, yeah. Yeah. That it is. Alright, okay. So, next on the docket, we have the squirting, where is it? The squirting cucumber. Right here. Which, as it ripens, the pressure in the fruit, in the pod, becomes really, like, high. And the connection between the pod and the rest of the stem becomes weaker, so that it just kind of can break off. And when that happens, there's a hole in the pod, and it spits out seeds everywhere. So, let's... I'm going to just switch between the mic and the headset real quick. So if the audio quality changes, that's why. Because we've got a little demo situation for the next, I don't know, couple minutes probably. Okay, so talking about exploding cucumbers.
Hello and welcome to Earth Unplugged. Now I think it's fair to say that on the channel we've been a little bit biased in our love of the natural world.
Yep,
we've been
have.
fairly animal heavy and in fact our lovely plants have been fairly overlooked. So today is all about
Balsam. It's an invasive species over here, but that's due to the fact that it's incredibly good at seed dispersal. You can literally set it off with pretty much anything, whether it's the touch of the hand or an animal or even the rain.
Let's skip forward a bit. Okay, here we go.
and another incredible method of seed dispersal we've got right here.
And it's the squirting cucumber.
Yeah, here we go.
So this is what the inside of one of those fruit pods looks like, and you can see it's got tiny little areas for the seeds to sit in, and actually there's some seeds in there already. And what normally happens in the wild is that animals come along and bump these, and then that pressure we were talking about just gets this huge release out the top, and the seeds fire out with all the juice inside. But we haven't got any animals around today, so I'm doing that with my fingers and the occasional stick. Way!
I think that's sweet.
Way!
Yeah, so the seeds go up to 95 kilometers an hour.
Look at that. There must be so much pressure.
Ah, looks cool.
That's awesome.
That's really cool.
Seeds just bouncing off everywhere. You can see why they're so effective.
Yeah.
I mean, I was a couple of meters away and I got hit by them.
So this is the fruit that just shot off the squirting cucumber, and it shot about 20 to 40 seeds out of the top there, and this fired the other way because it's got a huge internal pressure, so it really can release that liquid quite nicely, and it will shoot them up to 6 meters away. They'll travel about 95 kilometers an hour, or up to 60 miles an hour. So it's a really handy method of seed dispersal, just to spread them around as much as possible. And if you thought all that was amazing, then be sure to subscribe to the channel, because if you think that's as exciting as plants get, then you're about to have your mind changed by an upcoming film.
And we use some awesome tech to achieve these results. So,
Alright. So, yeah, exactly. Very much. So that is the link to the video. And it's like 6 to 20 feet or like 1 to 6 meters away. And then we've got a couple of other ones. Where is it? Then there's the dynamite tree that, what was it? Heracryptans, that's found in South America and is becoming invasive in parts of Africa. And the fruit explodes with an audible snap, rocketing each seed containing carpel outward from the tree at speeds of up to 156 kilometers per hour or 251 miles, or no, 156 miles per hour or 251 kilometers per hour. And the seeds can travel as far as 147 feet or 45 meters from the parent tree. So we've got, that's the other video in here. That's the mimosa. Alright. I think this is the one that we're looking for. Yeah. Heracryptans. Native to South America, Heracryptans is regarded as one of the most dangerous plants in the world. It's easily recognizable by the size reaching up to 60 meters or 200 feet, and its speck-covered bark. The dark and sharp spikes, which earned it the name monkey no-climb, are not the only way it can inflict harm. The poisonous fruits explode with a loud noise, flinging shrapnel of big hard seeds at speeds of up to 240 kilometers an hour that can cause injury. Also known as the sandbox tree, okay, introduced to other parts of the world where it's now invasive. Really? Really? I picked that one because it had a visual where it was exploding. But apparently not. Yeah, alright. Okay, one sec. Doing a search. Ah. Because I clicked on the wrong one. There we go. Prepping my fruit. No. Okay, let's. Alright. Okay. Ah. Come on. Okay, one sec. And we're back to regular audio. Alright. Pappadums. Those are a real thing. We thought they only existed in Middle Eastern fairy tales. Why was it introduced to other parts of the world? Let's plant a shrapnel tree, right? That that part of it was not explained. Let's see. What context was pappadums? Because I didn't see what the reference was, and the only thing that I know about it is as a food, and that's the only thing that's coming up. Yeah, as far as the dynamite tree, the only mention that I'm seeing of why it would be imported somewhere is that it's widely cultivated and often escapes into tropical regions, which, like, obviously it explodes everywhere. Um, oh, okay, here we go. No worries, guys. Sandbox tree. Right. The tree is harvested from the wild for local use as a medicine and source of materials. The wood is sometimes traded. The tree is grown to provide shade in plantations and is widely cultivated as an ornamental in tropical regions of America, Africa, and Asia. It's often planted along roadsides and in parks. Why was that a good idea? Hey, why? All parts of the plant contain a latex that is very toxic and can cause blindness if it comes into contact with the eyes. It is used in the making of arrow and fish poison. The latex contains toxic diethermine neurotoxin. The leaves, bark, fruit, seeds, seed oil, and latex are all used medicinally. The bark is an emetic and purgative. The sap in the bark is toxic, though it's said to be a remedy for leprosy. The milky sap is caustic and an irritant. An infusion of the leaves is used as a body rub for treating leprosy. The seed contains a glucosamine lectin, having mitogenic and hemagglutinating properties. A viscous oil obtained from the seed is a very strong, drastic purgative and emetic. Grown as a shade tree in plantations of cacao, etc., or as support for vanilla plants. The woody shells of unripe fruits are sometimes used as small boxes. Okay. They were at one time very fashionable accessories to the writing desk, used as sandboxes. These were containers of fine sand which was traditionally sprinkled over wet ink in order to dry it. Okay. When filled with sand, they were also used as paperweights. The sandbox was made. That's why it's called sandbox tree. Okay, that makes sense. Sandbox was made by harvesting the young fruit and holding the sections together with wire, or by pouring molten lead into the core before decorating and polishing it. What? Okay. Alright. Yeah, y'all wanna plant, something that's gonna explode in your face and try and, blind everybody? Alright. You do you, but okay. Have fun with that. With the shrapnel. No, the only exploding ones that I mentioned were the cucumber and the dynamite one. In the book, there is also a mention of the lodgepine dwarf mistletoe, or lodgepole pine dwarf mistletoe, that as the fruit matures, the mitochondria goes a bit nuts and heats up the fruit, and so it explodes everywhere. Yeah. Was how the moths survived in captivity explained? Not that I know of. Just that it was a thing. Let me go back though. It usually was it for most leaf flower tree moth pairings. Once the larvae have eaten their allotted number of seeds, they will then chew an escape hole in the fruit, pupate, and emerge as fully formed moths ready to repeat the process. Such is not the case for G. Lancellarium and its moth. Instead of chewing their way out, the larvae of the leaf flower moth are held captive within the fruit for nearly a year. Cut open the fruit of this leaf flower tree, and there is a chance you might find a fully formed moth waiting patiently inside of the swollen ovary chambers. Only once the fruit has matured and begun to split open will the moths within be released. So that's it. If there's multiple moths in at that point, all I can figure is that they might like hibernate for a bit, or like if there's multiple eggs laid in one fruit, then they're fighting for supremacy or something, and the one that's left is the one that emerges at the end of the year. That one, I don't know. But let's go back to this for a sec. It's like, come on. Now, is this going to... Well, I found a full article about it. So that's something. It's like 15 pages. Just trying to find, because everything else, it's just life cycle of a moth, which is not helpful. Even just life cycle of like any other moth that lives on a leaf flowered tree is not helpful because they're all different, apparently. Important details being left out, yeah. Also, someone amused that this is the only instance of interspecies sex slavery we've seen exist out of sci-fi fantasy. Yeah, basically. With all the ink devoted to the subject, you'd think there would be more real-world examples. The human imagination is weird. It is, though. It really is. But yeah, I mean, it's an interesting thing and that's presumably the link works. I don't know. We'll see. Oh yeah, should probably actually get some water. So, yeah. Alright. So we've got a little bit left to go. It looks like, yeah, we're down to the animal dispersal methods for seeds. Ow, ow, ow. 1 second. It's not a cramp, but it's like the back of your knee getting all tight and stuff. Fun times. Alright. So, animal dispersal, as a general, is kind of divided into things that got eaten and then pooped out, or things that didn't get eaten but got somehow stuck to the outside of the individual. Whether it's in your fur, or your hair, or your socks, or whatever. And I think all of us have had some experience with that if you've gone for any kind of a hike anywhere. Or just like a general walk sometimes, or whatever, depending on where you are. So we've got, what are the terms? I can't remember right now. So, epizookery and endozookery. So, endo meaning internal, exo meaning external. So, endozookery, exozookery. And zoo because, animals. Basically, it's down to, there's some seeds that have like in the case of, I don't know, the exploding cucumbers, they have kind of a gelatinous matrix that they're in. So they're wet, they might adhere to like skin more or something. Chia seeds have kind of a mucilaginous coating when they get wet, which is why they work to thicken stuff, but I would highly recommend you don't add them to a sandwich dry, because you wanted to, add some more nutrition to the sandwich, because they will get stuck in your teeth and then expand and hurt a lot. Not that I'm speaking from experience or anything, mind, but something to be aware of. What's the weirdest thing you found on you after a hike? It depends on where the hike was happening, really. I tend to be pretty cautious about where I'm stepping, and as a general thing, when, like, I wear bootcut jeans just as a thing, and especially if I'm going to be hiking around somewhere. So, burrs in my socks isn't really an issue so much. They attach to my shoelaces all the time, but like in my socks, not really, because like I tuck my jeans in around my ankles, and unless I'm looking for plant samples, I'm not out there like messing with the underbrush or trying to randomly touch things. Because, like, there's a path. I'm gonna stay on the path. I don't want to mess with the animals' houses that are, in the vicinity. They're vibing. I'm gonna let them do their thing. It's fine. So, like, aside from, like, a random bug that I wasn't all that familiar with, just like, oh, there you are. Or random burrs and stuff. I haven't really found weird stuff on me, per se. Now, weird stuff that I've seen while hiking or seen while out in nature spaces, that's another animal. But weird stuff found on my person, not really. Just okay. As a thing, right? I I know burdock as a remedy. If it's dandelion and burdock, then it's digestive. If it's a pain thing, then it's like you can usually find burdock and nettle growing in similar vicinities. And if you've gotten seriously stung by nettle, then you can kind of crush a burdock leaf and use that to take some of the sting out of the nettle, the impacted nettle area, or nettle impacted area, rather, because it negates the it's not really a toxin, but it kind of is the defense mechanism, if you will. But somehow, I still, even though it's in the freaking name, I forgot that burdock would, have burrs, as a dispersal thing. It's literally in the name. Alright, y'all want the ditch story, okay. Right. So, me and bicycles have a history. And on this, let me paint you a picture, shall we say. It's what part of the year was that? Nettle spring, so spring 2013. Yeah, okay. So I was hanging out with one of my friends, and we were going from Canterbury to Sea Houses. It's one of the coastal towns in southern England that is close enough that you could walk. Also, birds were never mentioned when Burdock is in the red wall box. Yeah. It's a bit odd. A bit odd that. Oh. Oh no. One sec. Story pause. Okay, here we go. So it's close enough to Canterbury that you could walk if you wanted to. It would just take like a couple hours probably. And we were riding our bicycles because the friend that I was with was convinced that the bus system coming back would have a mechanism to transport a bicycle. It doesn't, just, saying. If you ride a bicycle in not one of the big cities, you're gonna be riding the bike somewhere. You're not gonna be taking public transit somewhere unless it's like on the train, and then half the time you have to reserve a spot for your bike somewhere in advance, which did not know that. Anyway, moving on. So at this point, like, I was aware that bike riding might not be the best method of transport for me. Like, I'm good walking. Like, I can modulate my steps and stuff, but repeated motion tends to be an issue for my knees, just as a general. But for distance and for speed and stuff, that's one of the things that I felt like I needed to do. And I managed to pick up a bike pretty cheap at like one of the car boot sales in the vicinity. But I'm riding it, and like I have a relatively heavy mountain bike, and she's got like a real lightweight, like, city bike. And I don't know, there was something in the road, or what. Don't know if it was a me thing, or if it was a road thing, or if it was like there was a squirrel and I was veering away from the squirrel. I don't remember that. Just that it looked like it was flat ground with, there's a road with some plants on the sides. It wasn't. Just putting that out there. So we've got a giant field on this side, and we've got like a field on that side, and like some like a hedge situation with some nettles and whatever, because it likes to live in disturbed areas, because, opportunistic plants. So we're going down, like, how I managed to fall off the bike, like, not even fall off, like, how I managed to, like, veer off the road on the only straight, flat part of this entire thing, while still maintaining balance and control of the bike and everything for the entire rest of it, where we're going, like, over roots and under roots, and, like, there's a bridge and, like, curving everywhere. I have no idea. But, like, we're going, and we're going, and we're going, and then I fall over the ditch, surrounded by nettles. My entire left side was numb for a week and a half. I will say, though, as, like, if you're allergic to it, don't do it. Don't have anything to do with it. But I will give the nettle points for rather adept medical intervention. I suppose we'll go with that. Yeah, because, like, my shoulder, like, my left shoulder is kind of a constant issue. It has been since I was 10. My left knee, issues. Left side of my jaw, also issues. I mean, it hurt, and it felt like I had a bad sunburn for 2 weeks, but, like, it took care of the majority of the joint pain. Getting stabbed with hundreds of tiny hypodermic needles with plant toxin. So there's that. And then we continued on riding down the road, and then had to ride back up a hill at night because the bus wouldn't take the bikes. Which is fun. There was not enough chaos to navigate on that stretch. You overcompensating. Yes. I bring the chaos. I mean, the boot sale was alright. It's just, like, I didn't have a helmet at that point, so, like, I ended up picking up, what was it? I picked up like the front and back lights, you know, the blinky lights, and a bike at a boot sale for, I don't know, I think it was like £50. And then had to ride the bike over to the bike shop in town to get a lock and a helmet. Meanwhile, the bike's just like sitting there, and I'm hoping that no one's gonna take it. Ah, yes. You made Mom and us laugh with your tale of woe, thank you. You are entirely welcome, friends. Entirely welcome. It's like, meanwhile, I'm there trying to drag myself out of a ditch, and my friend's over here laughing her butt off because she grew up in the area. It's like, it's a rite of passage to fall off your bike into. It's a rite of passage to fall off your bike into a patch of nettles. Ooh, welcome to England. Ah, yes. I mean, now, like, whenever I run into a patch of nettles, like, I know that that's one of the things that my body responds well to. So, keep forgetting the mic's there. So, especially my shoulder, like right here, when it's really bad and I have access to like fresh nettles, just like whack it on, it helps. Even through a shirt, because the spikes are that pointy. The way you tell it with the dramatic gestures is the best. I mean, if you're gonna say the story, you gotta say the story, you know? It's a whole presentation, is what I'm saying. You know? Anyway. Basically, for seed dispersal and stuff with this, it's either something ate the fruit or seed or whatever, and the seed managed to survive the digestive tract and got pooped out, so now it's sitting somewhere and has fertilizer because it got pooped out somewhere. Or it got stuck to something because it's dried out or it's wet or whatever, and it stuck to something, and the something was walking around, and it took a bit for the critter to get the whatever it was off of them, and it got dropped somewhere. So, oh look, it now has a new spot to live. That's what it comes down to, really. But yeah. So, there's some parts in here that I knew, and there's, you know, more info on. There's some parts in here that are of interest and make me want to go read more things. There are some parts in here, like the thing with a moth that's just chilling in the fruit for a year, that's like, wait, you just threw that in. Like, explain. Explain, please. Yes, please. Where, what is this? And then there's some that it's just like, basic plant anatomy and everything. So it looks like a pretty good, at least so far, that is designed to get people who might not be really into plants because, there's cool, weird stuff that plants do. So, which, from what I understand, is kind of that's kind of his thing, and that's what the podcast is, basically. So, it's very on brand. Okay. Seeds are pretty dang hardy. The Trojans could have taken notes. Yeah. Yeah. Basically. Yay, inspiring learning. Yeah. Awesome. Awesome sauce. Ow, ow. Oh. Yeah. So, there is that. Now, anyone have any additional or follow-up or whatever questions? Because it... Ow! Not yet. Not yet. It's very much on the list of things. I just keep getting sidetracked. And I feel bad because I had the advance copy and stuff, but it didn't happen. Finally started yesterday and was turned off by the author calling Pistol the seedy heart of the plant. What? Okay. Well. Okay. Was not expecting that. Duly noted. When I get to it, we'll take more of a critical eye. Because, yeah. There we go on that. Yeah. I will say the cover's cool, if nothing else. They did a good job with that. So, alright. But yeah. Okay, so any questions or whatnots while we're hanging out and stuff, or nah? Because we're at the end of 4. So next week it's gonna be 5 and 6. So 5 is the fight for survival, and 6 is... Come on. Eating animals and other things. So we'll see what is in store for that. we'll see. Because we've got Zane's on? Alright. I didn't know they were on right now. In which case, let me just mute the desktop. Because that way I can... Yeah, there we go. That way I can bring up their stream over here and not have it just like randomly start playing audio. Maybe. Yeah. Yeah, let's go visit Zane. Because they're awesome. Alright. They're doing little tiny people's... Okay. Alrighty, friends. If you're not familiar with Zane, it looks like, I don't know, 4 or 5 people in the chat, sort of. They're a fabulous artist, and looks like they're currently working on chippies, which is cool and adorable. And I'm switching to the headset mic again, so bear with. One sec. Wait. Alright. Have a fabulous, awesome rest of your day, friends. I will see you all later. If it's not on Twitch on Thursday, it'll be on the YouTubes or the Discord or any number of other places, Instagram, whatnot. Have a fabulous day. I will see all of you lovely beans later. Is it gonna let it work? There we go. Hugs for you. Have a good one, guys.